Hello, Be Inspired audience. I'm here today with Theresa Werba. And Theresa is a poet. She's been contributing to Studio B's anthologies of poetry and prose for as long as we have published them. And we are in our 11th year, actually. And of course, as you know, because I've mentioned this in many places, this year we are publishing people's work on the Boyertown Area Expression, a digital newsletter, instead of making a hard copy poetry book. I wish we could do both, but there's not funding for both, and so here we are. But Theresa has spent 40 years putting together a just published book of her work entitled What Was and Is, Formal Poetry and Free Verse. Theresa, I remember you because we connected, I believe, at a Burke's Barge.
Yes, definitely.
Over sonnets. Is that right?
I'm sure. Yep.
I must have made some mention about how I enjoyed teaching sonnets.
Yeah.
And I really did. I challenged my students to write love sonnets every February or whatever.
It's lovely.
And you caught on to that because you write sonnets. That's one of your favorite. So, 40 years worth of poetry in your brand new book. And you tell quite a story.
I think I do. I try to.
Yeah.
I think the poems tell the story. I don't think I set out with that intention, but after looking at everything, I sort of categorized the poems, not according to genre, but according to sort of more or less topics that seem to make sense for my particular life. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly, but we're going to look it up. The topics is what? Writing is the labor of the mind.
That's the line from the first poem of the whole book. So each of the topics, or areas or whatever, are lines from the poems. So the first I have is writing is the labor of the mind. So I have about 10 or so, maybe 15 sonnets or various things on the act of writing, the creative process, and that sort of thing. And then all the loves I've loved and known is the largest.
Oh my God!
The largest
they
section.
are by name.
Yeah, well, some of them are not their real names to protect the innocent, but but I do have people that I wrote poems for and about, and then I have something called.
And these are all lovers of your life.
Oh yes,
people you have.
Oh, very much loved.
Yes,
very, very deep.
Yes,
very deeply.
and people who have not always been terribly good to you.
Right, you might say that,
Is
or
that
not reciprocated, or whatever the situation was.
I mean, you're like the Taylor Swift.
Oh, I hope not. I help us all. But anyway, this third category is my mental world is overloaded, and I had several things happen as an adult that changed my life. One was that I was diagnosed with autism in 2015. And I didn't know that I was autistic my whole life, but now it all makes complete sense to me why life went the way it did for me on so many levels. So I had that revelation, and then I had, as it goes through, I don't know if I mentioned it in there, that I did find my biological father. I had found my biological mother back in 1984, so I've known her for quite a long time.
So you were adopted?
I was.
Wow.
So, and I grew up in this very strange family with who my father was a psychologist, my mother was a psychiatrist.
You're adopted.
Yeah, and he was a professor at City University, but he was abusive. They both were abusive, but he was more so. And I ended up leaving home at 15. And
oh my goodness, Theresa!
Lived in New York City, got myself through high school, and then anyway. So some of what I'm writing about in my mental world is overloaded. Has something to do with the struggle of my mental condition over the years. But the poem called Asperger Speaks is basically talking in free verse about how I perceive the world as a person with Asperger's or Autism Level 1. They don't really like to call it Asperger's anymore because from what I have come to discover, the man named Asperger actually had some possible connections to the Nazis during World War II. So he's not really somebody they want to attach to this.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
Is that recent?
Yeah, like 2013, they changed it to Autism Level 1. So they put it on a spectrum now.
Yeah.
They call it autism spectrum disorder. So, I mean, if you looked at more severely autistic people than I am, some of them are nonverbal. Some of them are, not verbal. So it's an interesting thing that something where someone like me who's exceedingly verbal can be in the same spectrum as somebody who's not verbal at all, which is very bizarre to me, but that's...
Well, I think we're all somewhere on the
autism
I
think there's
spectrum.
a neurodivergent spectrum out there. I do think so. I think if you examine yourself, you probably find it. But anyway, I just wanted to get just to explain these.
Sure, go ahead.
Pantheon is a group of poems about people that either I admired, they're either historical characters from books,
and we
friends.
have JonBenet.
Right, JonBenet Ramsey. She was the girl that was killed.
Saint Joan of Arc.
Right.
Quasimodo.
That's from the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I have, and then some other people that I know. And then I do have a very powerful poem in here called Maxwell Schollenberger. It's about that little boy. He was over in Annville, right in western, is it Dauphin County? Annville's still Lebanon County. Okay, yeah, that little boy that they found that had been imprisoned for years in the dark.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, I had a heart to write that. And then I have one about the Babi Yar, which was an incident or a series of days of incidents that happened during World War II, where the Jews were shot into a ravine and killed.
Right.
So that was that story. But anyway, and then the next thing is music's made through it. I was a musician. I mean, I guess I still am, but I'm not active. And it has to do with my life as a singer, and that's kind of what those are about. And then the one called Ebbs and Flows of Life are definitely about some of the things that happened to me in my life maybe not the aging part, because the next part is the change that comes with age, which I've got plenty to say about, because aging is not fun. I mean, it has its glories and it has its sweetness sometimes, but it takes some adjustment. And then the last part is called Ever Towards Uncertainty, which incorporates sort of various phases of my spiritual journey, where I've been at, where I was at, and where I might be now, but I can't even put a finger on where I am now. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. That's this book.
It's your life.
Yeah. If anybody's interested in my life, I mean, I think anybody can. If you write about your life in an interesting way, I think your life becomes interesting to somebody. So I hope that somebody would give it a read and find my personal experiences interesting or satisfying to read about.
Well, tell me let's talk a little bit about the phases of your life. Okay, so in discovering who your real, your birth, I should say,
your
birth
I found my birth mother when I was 22. Yeah, I grew up, I always knew I was adopted. But I didn't know what my identity was. And so, ironically, my adopted father was Jewish. My adopted mother was like a WASP, basically. And so we went to the Episcopal Church growing up and the whole thing. But he was involved in this cult before I came on the scene. And it was something called the Source Teaching Society. They were New Age back in the 50s before there was New Age.
Sure.
So that kind of thing. But it was very cultic. I mean, he was impregnating women in the cult, and he thought he was Jesus.
Oh,
and they all think they're Jesus. But anyway, so when I came along, they had sort of left all that, and I grew up knowing I was adopted. But I was subjected to quite a bit of, a difficult relationship with them. I mean, there was psychological abuse, and then it also ultimately led to physical abuse, which was when I left home at 15.
Wow.
And then...
how did you survive?
I got a mother's helper job living in a rich lady's apartment, taking care of her son. And I did that, and I think I was still getting some Social Security because my father had retired or something, and I was still eligible for it for a certain number of years, so it wasn't a lot. It was just enough to keep me going. And then ultimately, when he died, in 1984. Then ultimately, my adopted mother and I, we came to a horrible end, and she disinherited me at the end. So that was a very difficult thing to go through. But anyway, I have a book about that if anybody's interested. It's called When Adoption Fails: Abuse, Autism, and the Search for My Identity. So it kind of explains that whole part of my life.
In poetry?
No, it's a story.
It's a memoir.
And I have pictures in it about me and all that. Yeah, so if you have anything to do with autism or adoption, you might find it interesting. So,
what a combination, Theresa.
Yeah, I seem to have had these kind of three areas that have touched my life: abuse, autism, and poetry and adoption. Sort of four things, I suppose. But anyway, as I did find my mother, my birth mother, when I was 22 in 1984. Well, it was before the internet. I had to do it by hand, writing for documents.
Wow.
I couldn't look up it. There wasn't anything to look up because there was no internet. And I did. I got birth records. I looked up things. And the beauty of what happened to me was that I got an address for her at her time of her birth, which was 908 South 15th Street, Goshen, Indiana. And so the person that was helping me through an agency called ALMA, the Adoptees Liberty Movement Association, asked me to go do a property search and find out who lives there now, because maybe they would know the previous owners and you could try to find her that way. So I call up, and it turns out that my great-grandmother, my biological great-grandmother, had still lived in that house all those years and had never moved, and I found my mom. And that was how I found her. So anyway, we have had this relationship. And then anyway, what I'm saying is she thought someone was my father that wasn't, because it went the way it did. So when I did the DNA testing a few years ago,
a few years ago.
Yeah. I think I did it in what was before the pandemic. It might have been 2018 or so. Okay. It came back that I was 50% Ashkenazi Jewish. And I was like, well, how exactly does this Rodriguez person fit into that? So, we went back and forth with my mom about it. And so I didn't know. I kind of just said, okay, that's interesting. And then in 2020, in February, I get an email. Hi, this is Chelsea Werba. I wanted you to know that I matched up with our mutual sister, Mary Latouf, who is also one of our sisters. And it turns out that we're half sisters, and your father's name is Robert Werba, and he died last year, and she sent me a ton of pictures.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, nobody can see this because if you get the book, When Adoption Fails, you'll see. But that's my father, and that's me.
It sure is.
Yeah, it sure is. And that's the two of us, and older. So that was really cool. And for someone like me, I always wanted to know what my identity was. It meant a lot to me. A lot of adoptees, it doesn't matter that much, but right. it really mattered to me. So it still matters to me. So after I found this out, I was like, I felt like I had to shed my skin. Like I couldn't stay with the name that wasn't my actual name, family name. So that's why I changed my name. No. If that makes any sense.
Okay, of course. I
mean, I do have a poem about that in here. I could read that one.
Please do.
I had planned to read something else, but let me see, where is it? What's in a name? Okay, I'm finally using my page numbers. Okay, it says, what's in a name? What does it mean to have identity? I had a name, but was unseen, for it was false to me. I could not live a lie, and so I'm now who I must be. I've shed the pretense, for now I know the truth has set me free. For falsehood is not true to me. And so I took the name of my true blood and family, the blood from which I came. For knowledge is a powerful force, and now what's been revealed is who I was and am, the source by which my name's been sealed. No need to wonder anymore, for science did bestow the answer I've been searching for. Who am I? Now I know. So that's...
Wow.
That's
now, how has that knowledge changed your daily life?
I feel like I'm I hate to say I'm home because that sounds silly, but I'm very, very confident. I feel much happier. I'm just feeling very happy.
I would guess because you experienced so much early trauma, knowing that you didn't belong there.
Right. Well, they told me I wasn't their child, and
Right.
they told me the worst thing they ever did was adopt me, and that, stuff like that. So,
But it gives you another way to see yourself.
I think so. I mean, I'm extremely happy. My children didn't really get it at first, but I think they're coming around to it now. I think they basically understand. But I felt like this was. I took my mother's maiden name, which is Brown, and my father's name, which is Werba. And so now I'm Theresa Brown Werba, and that's all. I had it finally changed on my birth certificate and everything. So it's all legitimate.
No
So
kidding.
I'm feeling very, very happy, extremely happy. I mean, because originally I wasn't even named Rodriguez. That was my father's name. When I found my mother at 22, that's who she told me my father was. So I took that name in my 30s after I was married. I decided to take it because I wanted my kids to have some connection to what I thought their
identity was.
their heritage was, or
Yeah,
their ethnicity, whatever, because I didn't have anything else to really give them in terms of that. So so I had a whole completely different name. But then that's why I had to do it. And so I'm just,
have they in any kind of way been affected by your revelations?
my kids.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think they like the fact that they have some Jewish ancestry. I think it means a lot to them. Because my kids are really a big blend. I mean, my ex-husband was Italian and Welsh and a bunch of other things, and my mother's English and German and Swiss, so they have like a huge mixture.
They are children of the world.
Yeah, they are Americans, very much.
They are Americans, but children of the world.
So it's very lovely. And
now I want to go back to what you have learned, how you have changed in all these many ways. So when you learned you were autistic, how did that manifest? How did that change you?
Well, I was in denial at first because my daughter-in-law was taking a psychology class, and I guess it had discussed autism in the class. And she went to my son and said, "This sounds like your mom," And so my son called me one day and said, "Have you ever considered that you might have autism?" I said, "You got to be freaking kidding me." I said,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I said, I'm bipolar, because that was the diagnosis that they gave me. And so it took me, I thought about it for a while. And then I ended up doing, of course, what everybody does. They go on the internet and take tests.
Right.
So I took these little tests, and they came back very, very disconcerting, to say the least. And
Why disconcerting? Teresa?
Because it was like seeing myself naked in a mirror, and I was like, oh God, that is really what I do, and that is how I think, and that is what my problem might have always been, because I always had problems with this, that, and the other in school, and behavioral problems and different things that made no sense to me. Why? I never knew why. Okay. And then I learned something called masking, which I never knew I even was doing.
Oh, tell me about that.
At least for me, they say women do it more than men, or males more than females more than males. It's sort of like, it's not exactly the superego, but it's similar, where I've learned how to present myself by watching others and learning from it. I've learned how to have a conversation with someone, and I've learned how to. I have to constantly think, when do I ask the other person the question? Because normally that would not be in my normal realm. I'll just talk for an hour. So I have to think, okay, now I should need to ask
like
them.
Me.
Yeah, now I need to ask you a question. So
yes.
And other things, like I have a difficulty with sudden change and stuff like that. So anyway, when I found out, I decided I wanted to get a formal diagnosis, because I didn't want to believe something just because somebody said it.
Right,
I wanted to know the truth. So I did get evaluated at Hershey Medical Center, and
no kidding,
wonderful psychologist Amanda Pearl. I felt like if everybody I've ever met in my life, she really understood me. I mean, I felt so at home. I wish she could be my therapist, but that's not what she does. So she just does, like diagnoses and stuff. But it's not usual, number one, to be female, although I think more females are being diagnosed because it's different than males. It really is. I think women tend to be more social. They tend to mask more, and that can be deceit. It could lead a professional into thinking that maybe because she talks so much or she talks so fast or she's loud that's manic. So that's what they thought, that I was bipolar, because I also had experienced depression in my life, but
for good reasons, I would guess.
Right, and I haven't been depressed for over 10 years. So how does that
Are you
fit?
on medication for bipolar?
No, not now. I used to be.
No kidding.
No, but I am on medication for autism, which has helped a great deal. It helps me not be as reactive to my environment, and it's very, very helpful.
ADHD medicine?
No, it's actually one of them is a heart medicine that lowers your heart rate.
Okay.
So it keeps me sort of calmer. And another one is sort of an off-use drug.
Yes.
Antipsychotic, believe it or not, but it actually works for autism. It helps me just not be as reactive to things around
Stimuli.
me. Yeah, because it can be very hyper-stimulating. I don't know what kind of
Please
time
go.
we have.
No, go. This is too fascinating. We're just going to keep talking.
I thought, I don't know, I don't know what you want me to share in terms of, maybe if we do have time for one more poem. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Which way do you want me to go with this? Because
probably you're self-revelatory. And I know the whole book is that. Mm-hmm. But as you come to understand who you are.
Then I would read the one about my my autism, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right. That one, I have to find it. Here we go. Okay. This is in free verse. So, like I said, my interest and the thing I enjoy writing most are sonnets. But I was never one to divide or entrench myself into one particular poetic camp, there seems to be camps.
Yes.
And if you write free verse, well then God forbid you should write a sonnet, or if you write sonnets, God forbid you should write free verse. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, my poor daughter is dying to get it on phone. So she won't be bothering me for a few minutes. Anyway, okay. So this is called Asperger Speaks, and it says Asperger syndrome was reclassified as Autism Level 1, part of autism spectrum disorder in the DSM-5, which was in 2013. In a world of hyperstimuli, lights and sounds and touches, I retreat into the world within myself for relief. There is too much to process all at once. It comes at me like a screaming horde, shoving up against my walls and forcing me to interact. Why interact? Most talk like that is stupid, pointless, irrational. If you do not care how I am today, why do you ask me how I am? Just say good morning or hello. It is this stupid, slow world where I move faster, think better, process factually that frustrates me. And when you talk, do you really understand? Why is it that we misalign? Why do you perceive what you are saying? Why do I misperceive what you are saying? Is this why you're frustrated with me? Why is my voice too loud? My speech too intense? Why do you think I'm being rude when I'm just annoyed? You do not like the things I like, the things that interest me, and I could talk unimpeded for hours about these very interesting things unless you stopped me. It could be canals or the Shakespearean authorship issue or points of linguistics or the study of late antiquity or Jewish history or poetry, my poetry. You do not understand the tiny things that matter so much to me or why they do, why I must tell you every detail, every minutia, why I have to must explain everything, every little thing. My mental world is overloaded, and then I go outside where the world is overloaded, and then I can do no more. At times, it seems I do not even care, because in that moment, it is simply not available for me to care. But inside myself, my heart is wide and deep. So deep, I have to shut it off in order to get through the interactions into which I must engage. Why is it been so hard to walk into a store or interact in public? Must I always play the game? Must I always act, pretend, and be something else just to buy something? My mind explodes with ideas, thoughts, learning, and logic connections and observations, but when to stop and when to give you a turn to speak evades me. I'm learning to do this to this very day. Without the social mask, I'm sure you would not like me. Being myself is one long conversation with myself. But I have learned to smile, to look into your eyes, to be politic when necessary, though I hate necessity, to play the nice game of interaction. If you would only understand, my heart is not my talking, but I am truly trying to reach you through my talking, and so I'm talking on and on and on and on and on. For rages come, and anger, the cursing, the frustration, the rantings. Why is everyone so stupid? Why am I in a world of idiots? Why doesn't this person have a brain? Perhaps the only disability is my intelligence. My hyperwired brain is both an advantage and a defect. Rigid and inflexible to sudden change, it sends me into spasms as I try to figure out what is going on. But it's not supposed to be this way. That's not what the menu said. That's not what you told me before. What I cannot process, I therefore cannot understand, and the world then makes me angry and frustrated. Only in the confines and restrictions of my bed, my morning routine puzzles, and my daily evening internet am I at equilibrium. It is here that I can find the quiet absent within my own mind. So, when I talk, that is truly me, trying to get out one iota of the cosmos within, one speck of the vast universe of my thoughts. Wouldn't you like to join this world and listen for a little while? So be patient with me. Try to listen through. Try to understand. Because inside I am very, very alone. Just my thoughts and me trying to be heard.
Oh, Theresa.
So that's how that is. But I do have one more that I really want to share. It's a sonnet because I feel like I should, as far as my contribution to this talk today, that I should end with the sonnet, but
I agree.
Trying to find the one that I'm looking for. Okay, it's called "Oh When I Hear." I consider this. I don't know. It's probably one of my best. I like the imagery that I'm using in terms of music, tonality, and suffering and life. So that's kind of why I like this one. Oh, when I hear. Oh, when I hear the plaintive, painful sound of music played within a minor key, or modal scales in doleful reverie, suspensions and its dissonance abound. A juxtaposing light and dark around a center of discordant harmony combined with the most weeping melody is where a truth so sacred may be found. For it is in the ebbing resolution, when tensions ease and struggling is at rest, that one can find a consonant conclusion and peace from pain residing in the breast. For suffering can be of benefit if acquiescing music's made through it.
Beautiful. Now that was a Petrarchan.
I think it was, I'm pretty sure Petrarchan, yes.
Petrarchan or Spencerian, one of the two.
No, it's Petrarchan. Because
is it Petrarchan?
Yeah, this is...
okay, define it for our listeners. Petrarchan sonnets.
Yeah, what is it? I'm sorry?
Petrarchan sonnets.
Do you want me to define it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Iambic pentameter.
Yeah, right. So you've got
14 lines.
Hard, soft, or strong, weak beats of 5 sets of the dump, the dump, the dump beats. And then each of these is, in this one, I have 1 and 4 are rhyming, 2 and 3 are rhyming. And then that's twice. And then the last one's is... It's every other one is rhyming at the end. There's different variations of Petrarchan sonnets.
Yes.
So
tell me when you fell in love with the sonnet.
I think in high school, because I think one of my English teachers must have taught us about it, because I don't know how I ever figured out how to do them. I think.
And it's amazing, given your mind, which is so open and so busy.
Very busy.
Okay.
Over busy.
That you found some sort of peace almost in the discipline.
It's a discipline. And you're absolutely right. It's something about the structure of it is comforting. There's a beauty in it, I think, personally, in the rhyming, because there's a musical quality to formal poetry in general, I think, you know, there's a beauty, not the free verse isn't beautiful. I mean, it can be very beautiful
exactly.
too.
Yes.
But there is something especially beautiful about the rhyming, because you're creating sort of echoes and sounds in the poetry that I find extremely gratifying. And I think you're right. I think it did provide me. Yeah. And a lot of times I would when I was writing more vigorously, I really could hear it, you know, like I could hear at least a beginning of a line or something and could construct a whole poem out of that.
Exactly. Well, I can remember in teaching it, I presented it to the kids as a challenge. Okay. Free verse, lovely. But it's almost like playing basketball when the net is your very height. And you can just plunk the ball in it without a whole lot of effort, you know. But playing basketball when you've got opponents, when you've got rules to the game that you must follow, when you've got a real challenge ahead, there's so much, what do you say?
Yeah.
Satisfaction.
You get more. You're bringing a lot to the table.
You
when you're
feel,
doing it. Yeah.
You feel like you've really done a thing.
I think that's true.
In following the rigid.
And if you have the ability to be artistic with it as well as you know, meet the challenge intellectually, it's a great thing. I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think that you know, I've tried a lot of times with my poems. I went beyond what I thought was standard,
right.
In some ways, because I wanted to push my own envelope. You know.
And you have done that with your entire life.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. I didn't even get into the fact that I was in an abusive marriage for 21 years, but that's a whole nother story. That's my third book is called Warning Signs of Abuse, Get Out Early and Stay Free Forever. I wrote that because I didn't want anybody else to go through what I went through.
Sure.
And I was hoping that if I wrote something up that would help a woman see, oh yeah, these are the things that he's doing already, and I'm only in this relationship for 2 months. Get out. You know, go. Get away from it as quickly as you can, because you'll get embroiled in it, and it's very difficult to leave once you have children. And, you know, if your religious beliefs tell you that you're supposed to stay, and
finances.
Yeah, and finances are not what you want them to be, and then so that's that other book. So I have these things.
And I will tell our audience that 40 years of struggling, of meeting these challenges, of disciplining a life and a mind can be found in Theresa's book.
Oh, I appreciate
that. And
that.
it's available on Amazon?
Well, Amazon, yeah. Or you can go to my website, which is just theresawerba.com, TheresaWerb as a boy, a.com. And then you can go right there, and it has everything listed. You can look at reviews, you can look at whatever you want, and then you can click on there and go to Amazon if you want to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
appreciate
joining
it.
us
It's
on the
very
Be Empires
lovely.
podcast today.
I really appreciate being able to share a little bit of my heart and soul and mind with you and whoever's listening. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.